Before leaving, please remember to make a contribution to all of my thousands of hours of work here, PayPal, Patreon, or fundraiser in the description below or on the China Rising Radio Sinoland article page. Thank you.
Greetings. I'm going to read you the extracts that I got from President Vladimir Putin of Russia, his comments at the Davos conference that was just held recently. That's part one. And then part two is going to be the same thing for Xi Jinping, the Chinese president. It's just remarkable to listen to these world leaders from communist, socialist, anti-imperialist countries and to note just how different they are than your Anglo-led, NATO, Five Eyes, European Union, Israel, where they are like emperors. They are like aristocratic rulers who can say anything they want, like Biden saying that Putin has no soul and is a killer, which he just did this week. And it's just, and I put the title, that Xi and Putin care more about you than your leaders. And it's absolutely true, because they realize that in order for their peoples to have peace and harmony, you have to have peace and harmony along with them. So I will now read part one. Russian president openly accuses the West kakistocracy, that's the governance by the worst of society, at the Valdai and Davos/WEF meetings, World Economic Forum meetings. Here's what Putin said. I would like to speak in more detail about the main challenges the international community is facing. The first one is socioeconomic. Starting from 1980, global per capita GDP has doubled in terms of real purchasing power parity. This is definitely a positive indicator. Globalization and domestic growth have led to strong growth in developing countries and lifted over 1 billion people out of poverty. Still, the main question is, what is the nature of this global growth and who benefited from it most? Developing countries benefited a lot from the growth demand for their traditional and even new products. However, this integration into the global economy has resulted in more than just new jobs and greater export earnings. It also had its social costs, including a significant gap in individual incomes. According to the World Bank, 3.6 million people subsisted on incomes under $5.50 per day in the United States in 2000, but in 2016, the number grew to 5.6 million people. Notice he's talking about the U.S., not someplace else. Meanwhile, globalization led to a significant increase in the revenue of large multinational, primarily U.S. and European companies. In terms of corporate profits, who got to hold the revenue? The answer is clear. 1% of the population. And what has happened in the lives of other people? In the past 30 years, in a number of developed countries, the real incomes of over half the citizens have been stagnating, not growing. Meanwhile, the cost of education and healthcare services has gone up. Do you know by how much? 3 times. In other words, millions of people, even in wealthy countries, have stopped hoping for an increase in their incomes. In the meantime, they are faced with the problem of how to keep themselves and their parents healthy and how to provide their children with a decent education. These imbalances in global socioeconomic development are a direct result of the policy pursued in the 1980s, which was often vulgar and dogmatic. This policy rested on the so-called Washington Consensus with its unwritten rules. when the priority was given to the economic growth based on a private debt in conditions of deregulation and low taxes on the wealthy and the corporations. As I have already mentioned, the coronavirus pandemic has only exacerbated these problems. In the last year, the global economy sustained the biggest decline since World War II. By July, the labor market had lost almost 500 million jobs. In the first 9 months of the past year alone, the losses of earnings amounted to $3.5 trillion. This figure is going up, and hence social tension is on the rise. Continuing, back in the late 80s, early 90s, there was a chance not just to accelerate the globalization process, but also to give it a different quality and make it more harmonious and sustainable in nature. But some countries saw themselves as victors of the Cold War. Of course, we know who we're talking about, Land. Not just saw themselves this way, but said it openly, took the course of simply reshaping the global political economic order to fit their own interests. In their euphoria, they especially abandoned substantive and equal dialogue with other actors in international life, chose not to improve or create universal institutions, and attempted instead to bring the entire world order under the spread of their own organizations, norms, and rules. They chose the road of globalization and security for their own beloved selves, for the select few, not for everyone. Again, he's talking about Land. It seems like elites don't see the deepening stratification in society and the erosion of the middle class. But the situation creates a climate of uncertainty that has a direct impact on the public mood. Sociological studies conducted around the world show that people in different countries and on different continents tend to see the future as murky and bleak. This is sad. The future does not entice them, but frightens them. At the same time, people see no real opportunities or means for changing anything, influencing events, and shaping policy. As for the claim that the fringe and populace have defeated the sensible, sober, and responsible minority, we are not talking about populists or anything like that, but about ordinary people, ordinary citizens who are losing trust in the ruling class. That is the problem. During the past 20 years, we have created a foundation for the so-called Fourth Industrial Revolution, also known as the Great Reset, based on the wide use of AI and automation and robotics. The coronavirus pandemic has greatly accelerated such projects and their implementation. However, this process is leading to new structural changes. I am thinking in particular of the labor market. This means that very many people could lose their jobs unless the state takes effective measures to prevent this. Most of these people are from the so-called middle class, which is the basis of any modern society. The rise of economic problems and inequality is splitting society, triggering social, racial, and ethnic intolerance. Indicatively, these tensions are bursting out even in countries with seemingly civil and democratic institutions that are designed to alleviate and stop such phenomena and excesses. The systemic socioeconomic problems are evoking such social discontent that they require special attention and real solutions. The dangerous illusion that they may be ignored or pushed into the corner is fraught with serious consequences. Society will still be divided politically and socially. This is bound to happen because people are dissatisfied not by some abstract issues, but by real problems that concern everyone, regardless of the political views that people have or think they have. Meanwhile, real problems evoke discontent. So the key question today is how to build a program of actions in order to not only quickly restore the global and national economies affected by the pandemic, but to ensure that this recovery is sustainable in the long run relies on a high-quality structure and helps overcome the burden of social imbalances. Clearly, economic growth will largely rely on fiscal incentives, with state budgets and central banks playing the key role. Actually, we can see these kinds of trends in the developed countries and also in some developing economies as well. An increasing role of the state in the socioeconomic sphere at the national level obviously implies greater responsibility and close interstate interaction when it comes to issues on the global agenda. Calls for inclusive growth and for creating decent standards of living for everyone are regularly made at various international forums. This is how it should be, and this is an absolutely correct view of our joint efforts. It is clear that the world cannot continue creating an economy that will only benefit 1 million people, or even the golden billion. This is a destructive precept. This model is unbalanced by default. The recent developments, including migration crises, have reaffirmed this once again. We must now proceed from stating facts to action, investing our efforts and resources into reducing social inequality in individual countries and into gradually balancing the economic development standards of different countries and regions in the world. This would put an end to the migration crises. The focus of this policy aimed at ensuring sustainable and harmonious development are clear. They imply the creation of new opportunities for everyone, conditions under which everyone will be able to develop and realize their potential, regardless of where they were born and are living. I would like to point out 4 key priorities as I see them. First, everyone must have comfortable living conditions, including housing and affordable transport, energy and public utility infrastructure, plus environmental welfare, something that must not be overlooked. Second, everyone must be sure that they will have a job that can ensure sustainable growth of income and hence decent standards of living. Everyone must have access to an effective system of lifelong education, which is absolutely indispensable now and which will allow people to develop, make a career, and receive a decent pension and social benefits upon retirement. Third, people must be confident that they will receive high quality and effective medical care whenever necessary, and that the national healthcare system will guarantee access to modern medical services. Fourth and finally, regardless of family income, children must be able to receive a decent education and realize their potential. Every child has potential. End of the extracts from President Putin. And again, if you objectively look at what he just said, he really cares about not only Russians, but all global citizens, because he knows that as long as the golden billion or the in the West are continuing to reap the vast majority of the benefits, resources, and assets, there will continue to be instability for you and for Russians. I will next do one with extract from Xi Jinping, which is quite different because the Chinese just have a different approach to diplomacy. Thank you.
China Rising Radio Sinoland and China Tech News Flash signing out. Please make a contribution to all of my hard work. Thank you.